If you're in your 40s or older, you've either seen E.T. at some point or you didn't see it on purpose. It's a pretty famous movie. For people in their teens and 20s, they have never seen it, or they have seen it at a store that sells imported goods, but they had no idea it was actually a movie. I imagine there are many people like that. In today's video, I talk thoroughly about Steven Spielberg's E.T., a film that is almost forgotten by everyone. Good evening, this is Toshio Okada's Seminar. A masterpiece, as it will be called in later generations, will be forgotten after 10 or 20 years, no matter what kind of hit movie it was. Or rather, only the rumor that the film was a hit is passed down through the generations, and people stop watching it. So no matter how good it is, no matter how wonderful it is, there is no guarantee that it will be handed down to future generations. I believe that in order to hand them down to future generations, we must tell people about them. That's one of the reasons why I pick up films that are more than 10 or 20 years old. The film I'm talking about today is one of those films that should be passed down to future generations. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to understand why it was such a hit. The other day, E.T. was aired on a Japanese movie program for the first time in a while. Despite the fact that it is a masterpiece, many people probably have really never seen it. But I feel that this is a film that we should watch now more than ever. So, I would like to talk about it today. I checked Twitter around the time E.T. finished its broadcast. Many people said E.T. was not cute, E.T. was much creepier than I expected. I've seen pictures of E.T., but I didn't think it was that creepy. I had the impression that many people said such things. When E.T. was first released in 1982, people felt very differently about it. I happened to be in the US at the time, and the shelves were filled with E.T.-related products and E.T. t-shirts. E.T.-related products were also available in Japan. Then why did E.T., who used to be so popular and even cute, give the impression of being creepy when he was broadcast on TV this time? It may come as a surprise, but those who felt that way did not see the film E.T. correctly. This is largely because they saw a version that was edited for a TV broadcast. Of course, the world has changed since the movie was first released too. During Japan's period of economic growth, everyone had enough money and emotional leeway, which favored a variety of values in society. They go like, "This is cute, oh wait, that is cute too." Conversely, when economic growth ends, diverse values are no longer accepted by society. They go like, "This is cute," to only what everyone says is cute. Maybe our tolerance level gets low, but I still think there are a lot of people who haven't seen the movie in the proper way. Of course, you understand the story well enough in the version edited for TV broadcast. But then, you don't get the meaning. Spielberg is actually a creator who uses images rather than drama or dialogue to convey his message. He is a creator who uses visual effects such as images and camera work to convey his message. So, even if a cut looks meaningless or is cut by a TV director because he thinks it is irrelevant to the story, it may be a visual foreshadowing of an emotional scene, or it may be connected to various other meanings. Now, as a sample, I'd like to show you 3 shots. All of them are full of emotions. These scenes and dialogues were cut from the TV broadcast version. Unfortunately, I think this has made Spielberg's message much less clear to the viewer. The movie E.T. is like a machine made with great precision. It's a machine that's made with such precision that it's supposed to impress the audience. So if you pull out the cogs or cords without knowing what you're doing, there's a danger that it won't work properly. Here we go. Look at the top of this panel. Let's talk about this scene. When Elliot saw E.T., he told his family about it, but they didn't believe him. Then Elliot blurts out, "Dad would believe me." His words froze the family's happy dinner. His father had gone to Mexico a few years ago with his young mistress. His sister Gertie doesn't remember him at all. Mary excuses herself and leaves the kitchen. Elliot takes his plate from the table and almost throws it into the sink. He turns on the hot water. Steam covers the window as he stares through it. This scene where the steam rises was cut in the TV edit. It expresses a kind of Elliot's loneliness. I guess that the TV director decided that it was okay to cut this scene because it does not relate to the storyline. But in fact, this cut is connected to the last scene. Here is the last scene. Let's move on to the next picture. This is a cut of the spaceship gangplank closing. E.T. is seen standing in the backlight inside the spaceship. This gangplank is closing from below. Then, you see Elliot. It's hard to see it here, but you can see the shadow of the gangplank rising over Elliot's face as he stares. In fact, the scene where the shadow of the gangplank rises over Elliot's face is exactly like the cut I described earlier, the scene where the steam rises at the kitchen sink. This is how Spielberg foreshadowed the story visually. These are the same two cuts. So, let's see, Elliot is still thinking about his father even though his father is gone. I guess I'll never see him again. Steam rises from the sink as he misses his father. In the cut of the last scene, Elliot is thinking, I guess I'll never see E.T. again. In both cuts, a shadow rises on Elliot's face as he looks up in the same way. E.T. is a father-son film, Spielberg has said many times in interviews. This scene is designed to clearly convey to the audience that this is the message the director wants to convey in the film, and Elliot is heartbroken here. However, the scene where Elliot is in the kitchen was cut in the TV broadcast, so this last scene looks like a simple goodbye scene. Unless the kitchen scene is shown, the viewer will never know that there is a visual rhyme in the last scene. Let's go to the next one. This is the second cut edited for a TV broadcast. His mother Mary says, "If you ever see it again, don't touch it. Just call me and we'll have someone come and take it away." She thinks it was a street dog and tells him a local animal control can deal with it. Then in the next cut, Elliot replies, "But they'll give it a lobotomy, or do experiments on it or something." He insists that he cannot be so cruel. This is an important scene. When Mother Mary says, "If you ever see it again, don't touch it. Just call me and we'll have someone come and take it away," Elliot replies, "But they'll give it a lobotomy, or do experiments on it or something." I don't have a picture here, but there is a scene where Elliot is taking a science class. That day they are supposed to dissect frogs. As Elliot is watching the frogs trapped in the jar, he takes pity on them and lets them out of the jar. This scene is of course connected to the scene where Elliot responds to his mother Mary, "But they'll give it a lobotomy, or do experiments on it or something." It is also connected to the next scene. Let's move on to the bottom picture to see what it's all about. E.T. is dead and here you see Keys, an adult male, talking to Elliot. Keys says to Elliot they're going to have to take him away now. But Elliot is silent. This is the part that was edited out in the TV version, number 2. Elliot's mouth is moving, but we have no Japanese voice-over. This line has been edited out. "Your dear friend E.T. is dead. Go ahead and cry." That's what Keys and the audience are led to believe. In the original version, however, Elliot does not change his facial expression at all and says, "They'll just cut him all up." He coldly replies to Keys. Then Keys doesn't say anything back. Because Elliot is right. As Elliot says, Keys is going to dissect this spaceman after this. This scene is connected to the two scenes I mentioned earlier. Elliot says they'll just cut him all up without changing his expression. He doesn't cry in front of adults. If he cries, that would be admitting defeat to an adult. Instead, Elliot looks Keys in the eye and tells him clearly that he knows he is about to dissect a spaceman. Then Keys cannot say anything. He can only take Elliot to the room where E.T. is. For adults, these creatures are, after all, only objects to be used for research purposes. When Elliot talks to Keys without changing his facial expression, it is because he is desperate for an adult. If Elliot had any hope for the adults, he could have made a face like he was about to cry or smiled, but there is no such thing. He has no hope for adults at all, only despair. The two scenes I mentioned before make Elliot's despair even more evident here. Yet, the TV director edited out Elliot's lines. The scene was used, so there was no need to edit out only the dialogue. Elliot's mouth is moving, but we don't have a Japanese voiceover. Elliot's cry that even children know how adults treat aliens. I guess they cut it out because it would interfere with E.T., a movie that the whole family can watch together and be moved to tears. If a TV director edits these cuts, the essence of the movie is lost. That is not the only thing that makes it a great film. The TV director edited out Elliot's line. They'll just cut him all up in that cut because it interfered with the viewer's emotional connection. So E.T. becomes more and more a children's movie. It's a shame. Finally, here is the third scene that was edited out. Look at the top picture here. His brother Michael and Elliot are talking in the garage. Michael tells Elliot he doesn't look too good lately. Michael is worried that E.T. is not feeling well. "Don't say that, we're fine," says Elliot. Michael goes, "What's this we stuff? You say we all the time now." "I'm not kidding, let's move on." This is Keyes eavesdropping on their conversation. The government guy who is chasing the spaceman, who may have been sent by the government. Keyes is in the van listening in on their conversation. This is a cut of him eavesdropping on Elliot and Michael's conversation the whole time. It's a very suspenseful scene actually, so here's the thing. Michael is worried that E.T. is not feeling well. At this time, E.T. has already lost his energy and is on the very end of his lifespan. E.T. cannot survive for long on a planet like Earth. A government man named Keyes is listening in on their conversation from inside the van. It's a suspenseful scene when this man finds out that they are hiding E.T. in their house. But in the original film, this scene is a bit longer. There is a third scene between the top cut and the middle cut. Dad's shirt. Elliot and Mike are in the garage searching for objects that E.T. could use for his communicator, and they happen to find their father's shirt. Their father had disappeared some years ago when he and his young mistress left for Mexico. These two boys still love their father, and they find his shirt and smell it a little. Strangely enough, Keyes is also listening to their conversation. In fact, this scene has a lot to do with the theme of the movie. I strongly recommend you to watch the original film, not just the edited TV version. I will take the time to explain what is in the original film. This is E.T.'s spaceship. It's a beautiful starry night. A pumpkin-like spaceship lands in the woods outside of Los Angeles. Little outer space creatures come out of the spaceship and start gathering plants. However, mysterious men appear chasing the spaceship, and the aliens flee to the ship in a panic. The ship hovers, then departs quickly, spinning above the treetops and disappearing into the night sky. However, one of the aliens fails to escape. This is the story of a small alien left alone in an unknown world. Here are some character figures from E.T. This is E.T., the main character. E.T. was named after his brother Michael's friend. E.T. stands for extraterrestrial. It sounds like a scientific term, but in fact, in the scientific world, they do not call these creatures extraterrestrial. It is an adjective meaning extraterrestrial, not a noun. It should be called ETI, extraterrestrial intelligence. Or you can say extraterrestrial being. ET itself doesn't make sense. Spielberg explains what ET is to his crew members. I didn't know that either until I watched the making of the film. According to Steven Spielberg, ET is a vegetable. I was surprised that ET is a vegetable. It is not an animal like us, but actually an evolution of a plant. When a crew member asked him, "Is he a plant?" Spielberg replies, "No, he's a vegetable." If you know that ET is a vegetable, you can see the movie a little differently. His heart light glows and you can see his internal organs, but they are not animal organs. They look like the inside of a green bell pepper or an apple when you cut in half. They are totally different from animal organs. If you look at the screen carefully, you will see that what I'm talking about is true. Also, the real name of this creature has not been revealed. So we call this creature ET in this video. Everyone calls it ET and he calls himself ET Phone Home. Since he has admitted that he is E.T., I will call him E.T. as well. The man who chased E.T. and the others in the forest was sent by this government. He is called Keys. This is not his real name. He has a lot of car keys and other keys hanging from his belt, and when he chases after E.T. and the others, the keys make a tremendous racket. That's why E.T. and his friends nicknamed him Keys. In the movie, Elliot and his friends never call this man by his name. Also, in the title credits, he is called Keys. But why did E.T. and his fellow creatures give him the nickname? It's because he is such a famous guy among them. Whenever they try to secretly collect plants on Earth, Keys comes along. He makes a tremendous racket and chases after them. E.T. and his fellow creatures wondered what that sound was. They don't know anything about car keys or anything like that. So they assumed it must be alien teeth. Since they are vegetable aliens, they believe that Keys is catching and eating various other aliens. Animals eat vegetables. I'm not joking. It's written in the original novel. They believe that because they are vegetables, if an animal catches them, they will be eaten. They also believe he's intentionally making loud noises with the teeth of aliens he's ever eaten hanging from his belt to scare them. So E.T. runs away from the Keys as hard as he can, knowing that if he gets caught, it will be his last chance. But later in the movie, we find out that Keys is not such a bad guy. All the aliens, including E.T., believe him to be a scary animal who is chasing them toward the landing spot. Again, E.T. is a vegetable alien and does not understand the animal mentality at all. Animals move fast, have predatory behavior, and have individual differences. They also sometimes argue. There is a difference between parents and children, and they have love and hatred for each other. E.T. does not understand at all the values that are peculiar to animals. So there are some misunderstandings there as well. This is the end of Keys' explanation. E.T. runs away from the forest when Keys finds him. There is a residential area in the suburbs with a house perched on a high hill. He hides in a shed, then the protagonist tiptoes closer to the shed. A boy of 9 or 10 having shaggy brown hair and deep, dark eyes. Elliot is a middle child, fatherless and friendless. He is skinny and looks very weak. Just by his appearance, you can tell that he belongs to the losing group in school. His brother is a winner who plays American football in school. He is the type of boy who hides his face in a hoodie. That's Elliot. One night, his brother Michael and his friends are seated around a kitchen table. They are into the final hours of a late-night Dungeons and Dragons-like game. The reason I say Dungeons and Dragons-like is that Spielberg's team really wanted to use the D&D, which was popular at the time. His crew negotiated with the game company for permission to use it, but they were refused, saying, "We can't give permission for such an unknown film." Maybe the person in charge was probably very upset later. So his crew made a D&D-like game and they are playing it in the scene. Elliot wants to join his big brother. But everyone doesn't care about him. This is his big brother, Michael. Maybe Elliot is a daddy's boy because he is the only one with dark hair. His brother, sister and mother all have blonde hair. His older brother is what we call a jock at school. He secretly drives his mom's Volvo behind her back. It's the same type of the car that Chihiro's father drove in Spirited Away. He practices driving his mom's Volvo out of the parking lot every day behind her back. But he keeps hitting the wall and is scared that his sister is going to tell on her. There is a climax in the latter half of the film when he drives the car forward for the first time. It is a good scene. He is a rather good older brother, but he puts his friends before his brother. I guess it's natural for a boy of his age. He has that kind of character. Elliot goes to pick up a pizza delivery on his brother's orders. In 1982, most Japanese people, at least me living in Osaka, had never heard of pizza delivery. Other than pizza delivery, things that were unfamiliar in Japan at the time of the film's release, such as divorced parents and the fixed ranking order among students that occurs spontaneously in schools, have become commonplace in Japan by now. So I feel that Japan today is getting closer to the US in 1982 as depicted in E.T. Elliot feels the presence of a strange creature in the shed and rushes home. But his mom doesn't believe him when he returns home. Here comes the mother. All the figures are posing the same way. I don't like it so much, but you know these are not expensive figures. Her name is Mary. She is divorced, late 30s, driving a Volvo. She is a very nice mother, but she still can't accept the fact that her husband left her for Mexico to run off with a young lover. This is evident in the scene when Elliot goes missing and a police officer comes to talk to her. When he asks any family problems or recent arguments, Mary uncomfortably says, "My husband and I just separated recently." She says recently, but it's not recently. I mean, for example, the youngest sister Gertie doesn't say anything about her father's memory at all. In other words, the 6-year-old daughter doesn't even remember her father, so they had already broken up about 4 years ago. Spielberg's films sometimes have characters lie in their dialogues like this. This is to make the audience understand that Mary, the mother, still can't accept the reality of divorce, and that's why talking about the father is taboo among the family members. Spielberg's parents were also divorced and the topic was taboo in the family, so I think the setting is very close to reality. His mother, Mary, doesn't believe Elliot when he tells her there is a strange creature in the shed. Neither his brother nor his tomboyish sister Gertie believe Elliot. This is Gertie, the tomboy sister. Her pose looks better than the others. This is Gertie, the younger sister. She is 5 years old. She may be the same age as Shinizuke Nohara. She loves to dress up as a cowgirl. She dresses up as a cowgirl when she goes to kindergarten. Even when everyone else dresses up as a ghost or something for Halloween, when they ask her, "What are you going as, Gert?" she answers, "I'm going as a cowgirl," immediately. That's how much she really loves cowgirl. When Elliot's mother and brother don't believe him and his sister makes fun of him, Elliot can't help but say, "Dad would believe me." With that one word, the atmosphere in the family suddenly freezes. At the dinner table, the older brother and younger sister Gertie look at each other and glance at the mother. Mary excuses herself with tears in her eyes and gets up to go to the kitchen. She still can't take it anymore and goes to her room. Elliot is washing dishes by himself. This is the scene I mentioned earlier. The scene of Elliot washing dishes rhymes with the last scene as explained at the beginning. E.T. is a very unique film of Spielberg. It was originally planned as a sequel to the 1977 film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was released 5 years before E.T. But the title of this film is rather strange, isn't it? He's Joseph Allen Hynek, who participated in the U.S. Air Force UFO studies undertaken by the U.S. Air Force. He was an authority on astronomy and a UFO denier, but after he joined UFO studies undertaken by the U.S. Air Force, he changed his stance from a thorough denier to a positive one. He is a very rare person. This is a term he created. He defines close encounters of the first kind as seeing a UFO at a distance of 150 meters or less, with details clearly visible. Second, the UFO will leave evidence of its approach. For example, grass on fire at the landing site, a car getting stuck, a blown fuse in a house, and many other phenomena can occur. Experiencing these phenomena is defined as close encounters of the second kind. Close encounters of the third kind are defined as direct contact with the crew aboard the UFO. This is the title of the film. It is a rather odd title for a movie. That's why it's E.T. Extraterrestrial, because it's a sequel to a movie with scientific jargon itself in the title. People really objected to this one. Spielberg said, "It's a sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so why not call it Extraterrestrial? If E.T. is not good enough, what about the title before that?" Close Encounters of the Third Kind was breaking box office records until Star Wars came out. If Close Encounters of the Third Kind is okay, why not Extraterrestrial? After much persuasion, he managed to make it happen. What's unique about E.T. is that the budget for the film is only $10 million. That's almost $100 million in today's prices. This is one of the lowest budget Spielberg films. Out of a production budget of only $10 million, $1.5 million was spent on a mechanically operated E.T. They put all kinds of machines inside E.T.'s body to make his heart move and heart light burn, and his body and eyes move. It cost $1.5 million, or 15% of the total budget, just to make this. That's how low the budget is. That's why there are only child actors and unknown actors in this movie. But that's exactly the kind of movie Spielberg wanted to make. Every Hollywood movie with famous actors has to be a hit. You have to listen to the film companies. He wanted to make a small film. Even Star Wars, a low-budget movie, had to have Alec Guinness, a famous British Shakespearean actor. That's how important it is for a Hollywood movie to know which actors are in the movie. There used to be a time when cinema owners only judged which films to show in their theaters based on the actors in the film. Therefore, to make a film with mostly child actors and no famous actors at all would have been suicide, even with Spielberg's fame. So Spielberg said, "Let me make this adventure for only $10 million. It is a very special film among Spielberg's works. E.T., which cost $1.5 million, didn't move very smoothly. It was made by an Italian visual effects artist named Carlo Rambaldi. When making it, Rambaldi said, "Only my nephew could make this part, or only a friend of my uncle could make this part," and called many of his acquaintances and relatives from Italy, which ultimately cost a lot of money. E.T., which he spent a lot of money on, managed to move in the climax scene, but it didn't move as much as he expected. It was especially difficult to make the fingertips work. It was very difficult to make the fingers move in detail with the technology of the time. Spielberg was getting tired of it, so he said to a pantomime woman, "You have long fingers, I inherited them from my mother," and he said, "I'm sorry, but could you do ET's hands for me?" They put a very long finger on the woman's fingertip and continued filming. The woman's fingertips were attached to the long fingers of E.T., and the filming continued. In the movie, most of the close-ups of E.T.'s hands and the scene where he picks up the chocolate and most of the hand movements are done by the pantomime woman. However, when the movie was released, E.T. made by Carlo Rambaldi was so well received that it looked as if it was made with great skill. Even though you see the body of E.T. was on the screen, this woman was under the body, and only the hand part was acted by her. Almost all of the scenes were shooted this way. Another reason for keeping the budget so low was that Spielberg wanted to make films the way he made private films. He is used to it now, but Spielberg was very stressed about Hollywood films with big budgets and big stars, especially with male crew and male actors. In a way, Hollywood actors have strong egos. Spielberg's family has been his mother since his father ran away when he was a child. His mother was a famous pianist and had 7 assistants. All of her assistants were women too. His mother was a famous pianist and she had 7 female assistants. In addition, Spielberg has 3 younger sisters. Growing up as the only boy among all women, Spielberg is not very good with masculine men. First of all, Spielberg himself is short, thin, hook-nosed, and has shaggy hair. He is not the type of man who attracts girls at all in school. So he may admire manly men in a corner of his mind, but he is not very good with them. That's why he didn't like Harrison Ford very much at first. Harrison Ford is very picky about his acting. He would say, "Why is this scene the way it is? Director, I've been thinking about it, and I think this scene should be this way." Spielberg is not good at dealing with people like that. That's why many of the actors who work with Spielberg, such as Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise, listen to what the director says. Like Richard Dreyfuss and Harrison Ford, Spielberg was not very good at pushy people. The more famous a male actor becomes, the more he always tries to persuade the director with his own acting plan. George Lucas of Star Wars also said that he is not good at this kind of masculine approach. More than that, Spielberg avoided arguing with people anyway. In fact, Spielberg was diagnosed with dyslexia in 2012. Literacy is a condition in which a person cannot read or recognize the shapes of letters well. He has trouble communicating with others. Before he was diagnosed with dyslexia, Spielberg himself said that he had been diagnosed with Asperger's disorder. Anyway, what both films have in common is that Spielberg is completely poor at communicating with people through words. But he has a very keen sense that if he shows a film in this way, people will understand it. When he sees a movie that was shot by someone else, he thinks, that's what it means. If I do this, the audience will have this kind of emotion. So his disadvantage became his advantage. However, especially in Hollywood, the director always has to be confident and have his own vision and convey it to everyone. You can't be a director if you can't confidently tell people why a scene has to be the way it is. The director of the movie Alien, Ridley Scott, behaved like a gentleman in a rather English way. I read somewhere that he had a big fight with the crew because of it. That's true. The way movies are made in Hollywood, everyone is basically upwardly motivated. The cameraman, the lighting designer, they all want to say something to the director, to appeal to him, to get their own ideas through. But Spielberg is very stressed when they do that. The shooting site for E.T. was very different from such a Hollywood masculine site. Kathleen Kennedy, who would become a producer for the first time on E.T., was chosen as a producer. They have been working together since around the time of the film 1941, in which she participated as an assistant producer. His selection was a surprise to others. Most importantly of all, Kathleen Kennedy is very complimentary of everything Spielberg does. Moreover, Spielberg even arranged for Kathleen Kennedy to be present at every place he went. The screenplay was written by Melissa Matheson, Harrison Ford's girlfriend at the time. Kathleen Kennedy and Melissa Matheson are similar types of people. So you can see that Spielberg would feel more comfortable with this type of woman in his work. Melissa Matheson is a screenwriter, but somehow she started to stay on the site and give acting lessons. Finally, she started saying things like, "The light is not there, and the camera should be coming from here." Like Kathleen Kennedy, Melissa Matheson started to act bossy more and more on the site. In the credits at the end of the film, she is listed as an associate producer. She has another job title other than screenwriter. They would say, "This is great," or "This scene is amazing, Steve, you're a genius," and that really helped Spielberg to relax. There's a book called E.T. the Extraterrestrial from Concept to Classic. In this book, it says that the crew was extremely small at the time, so everyone was very friendly and in sync with each other. He also says that he had never worked with so many women on a production site. I watched the making of the film, and I could see that the number of female crew members was much larger than in other films. It was a relaxing atmosphere for Spielberg. Spielberg made E.T. in the same environment where he was surrounded by women as a child. It was a relaxing atmosphere, just like his childhood home. Spielberg's initial plan was to have no adult faces on the screen at all. Have you read the Snoopy comic? Charles M. Schultz's Snoopy does not have any adults in it. There is a scene where an adult appears, but all you can see is their legs. Also in the cartoon, an adult says an inaudible line, then Charlie Brown replies like, "Okay, I'll do it right now." At first, Spielberg wanted to make the film in such a way. Even if an adult appears in the film, he wanted to shoot the whole film with a direction in which only the adult's legs can be seen, because the film is portrayed from the child's point of view. That is why, in the scene at the beginning of the film where E.T. is stranded on the Earth, you can only see Keys from the waist down. When his face is about to appear, the backlight interferes. In this scene, they are trying not to show an adult's face. That's because they were shooting in that direction at the time. However, when filming began, Kathleen Kennedy and Melissa Matheson told Spielberg that it was impossible to continue filming with this direction. Spielberg then dismissed the directional plan out of hand. He was free from stress on the site with female crews, and he was free to come up with ideas, to make suggestions, and to easily dismiss any idea he came up with when female crews, not male crews, told him it was not good. Another thing is, the last scene is made possible because most of the crew are women. I love the last scene. It's a close-up of Elliot's face. When the spaceship flies away, the other characters are basically smiling, but Elliot is looking up with a serious face. I'll never get to see him again. So he's looking at the spaceship until the last second. The wind is drifting in and Elliot's hair is blowing in the wind. At this point, John Williams' music comes in, the screen goes dark, and the credits appear on the screen. It's a really great ending, but this is actually a different ending from what they originally planned. In the original plan, after the close-up of Elliot's face, you can still see the spaceship flying away. It is the same as in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Close Encounters of the Third Kind also shows the spaceship flying into the night sky and into space at the end. There is a spacecraft flying into space as well, and there is a U.S. Air Force scramble and jet fighters chase after ET spacecraft. But the spacecraft is accelerating up at a very high speed. The scrambled jet fighters can no longer keep up with the ET spacecraft, and they stall and give up. After that, ET looks at the Earth longingly out the window of his spaceship. ET's friend comes up next to him and their heart lights burn red. That was the ending they had originally planned. Oops, there's more. We see Elliot's house about 3 or 4 weeks later. At his house, Elliot is playing a D&D-like game again with his brother and his brother's friend, and this time Elliot is playing too. However, when they are playing the game, Elliot is the game master. Then the view goes out from the window and moves up from the roof. We see ET's communicator on the roof. The communicator looks as if it is barely working by the wind that is blowing over the roof. In other words, the viewer can expect the possibility that ET and Elliot may still be communicating. Then, the word "the end" appears on the screen. This was the plan. But Spielberg changed his mind when they were shooting the scene where Elliot looks up with a despairing expression on his face. This scene really moved all of the crew who were there. The cameraman started crying halfway through the shot, wiping away tears as he shot. Spielberg cried, Melissa Mathison cried, Kathleen Kennedy cried. The boys' performance was so great that everyone was crying as they watched. After the scene was shot, Spielberg suddenly announced to his crew, "This is the end of the movie. We're not going to do the jet plane scene, we're not going to do the scene in the spaceship, we're not going to do the scene at Elliot's house, and that's the end of the film." Everyone was stunned and puzzled there. Yeah. This is certainly a very good scene. But are you sure that's it? Then Kathleen Kennedy and Melissa Mathison stood up and said, "You're absolutely right, Steve, we're done." So everyone agreed that this was the new ending of the film. This final scene in the history of cinema is memorable precisely because it ends so abruptly. It was actually made possible by the female crews, I can say. So why did Spielberg make the film E.T.? There is a very sad reason there. Also, E.T. dies once in the story. It looks like he caught a really bad cold because he was at the river on a rainy night when it was cold, and that killed him. But it is not true. He is a vegetable, in other words, a plant, so he would not have died for that reason. In fact, there is a killer of E.T. I will continue talking about who killed E.T. in the next video.